Howdy folks, I'm Curious Common Sootywing, contentedly crawling over cool cornflowers.
I'm Amber.
And here are more cool cornflowers for us to crawl over, just like the butterflies that we are. We don't like to use our wings because they're covered in soot. Let's get
No,
started.
these are actually very cool butterflies. Unfortunately, they're super uncommon in Maine, but they're pretty black butterflies, and I'd love to see one someday.
Alright folks, and our first letter is titled, Am I a Jerk for Having My Neighbor's Car Towed After She Kept Parking in My Mother's Handicapped Spot? No. I'm a 29-year-old female and I let my mother move in with me. She is physically disabled after crashing her car in 2020. In front of our house, we have a handicap spot for her. We had to go through a bunch of hoops and hurdles for her to have that spot in front of our home. My neighbor has been extremely inconsiderate lately. Her reason for parking in my mother's spot is, it's a pain in my butt to park in my own driveway. Your house is beside mine. It's no big deal. Yeah, like my mother not being able to walk long distances due to her disability is not a big deal. She parked in my mother's spot again as we were coming home from the store. I went to her house and I knocked. She answered the door and said, "What do you want?" And I said, "Hey, I'm not trying to be a burden, but can you move your car? My mother is waiting in the car for you to move. My mother is disabled and cannot walk far distances. Last time you parked here, we had to park all the way down the street and it was hard for my mom to walk." My neighbor said it's a public street and she slammed the door in my face. I grabbed my mother and I helped her into the house. I parked the car down the street. I went into the house and I called the non-emergency line. They gave me a number to call to get the car towed. And an hour later, a towing company came by and towed her car. My neighbor saw the car being towed and cursed me out for literally parking on my private property because I own that house. Am I the jerk? And folks, I actually want to read a comment here because I think that it'll clear up some, even any last remnants type of questions one might have. And I'll read this one real quick. Maximum Ear 1745 says, Info, is it really your private property? Or is it a designated disabled spot on a public street? For example, can anyone with a disabled permit legally park there? And OP replies, it is private property. And then OP responds to this deleted comment, I do have a sign. The sign says private parking for my mother's name. So apparently they asked about whether it was labeled appropriately or not. And Let's Get This Party On says, not the jerk, as long as your neighbor isn't disabled. This isn't your mother's spot. It's a disability parking on a public street where anyone with a disability badge can park. And OP replies, actually, I own the house and it's on private property. So this is my mother's handicap spot. In my area, you can have your own handicap spot in front of your house as long as you meet certain criteria. It's a hassle to get for sure. And Baba Sella says, the street is not private property. And OP replies, it's in front of my house on my property. In my country, you can get your own personal handicap spot in front of your house. It's not like the US or Canada. And then I'll read this last one. And Chloe Phil says, how can it be that parking in her own driveway is less convenient than parking in front of OP's house? Maybe I'm missing something here. And OP replies, it's because her driveway is an inclined hill or some BS like that. She just likes causing problems. All right, folks, now that we've read all that, what do you think?
Not the jerk. This is a designated parking spot for OP's mom, who is disabled. This is not a free-for-all for anyone.
Yeah.
And it's really gross that the neighbor is taking a spot that someone else needs because her driveway is inconvenient. She chose to buy a house with a driveway that was on an inclined hill, and so she just has to deal with it.
Yeah, and I think that it's more or less that she wants to prove that she can park there, because it just feels like this is like a I drink your milkshake type of situation where she's parking there to assert dominance over OP.
I mean, it could be that, but like some people just don't like driving up hills, and it could be that she just gets sick of driving up the hill every time she wants to get out of her driveway.
I mean, maybe I'm being cynical here, but it just feels like a power move. Like, oh, I know that your mom is disabled because OP's talked to them. It literally has their mother's name and on the, parking place here. So it just feels like one of these people who like to do things that they're told that they can't do. And so they're being contrarians and they're paying the price for it. So I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm not inside this person's head. I'm probably, reading into the situation some, but given that she has a perfectly good parking spot in front of her house, what other conclusion can you draw here other than like maybe she just doesn't like the hill? But I mean, like you said, one does not accidentally buy a house with a driveway on an incline, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you knew what you were getting into when you bought the house. So I don't know. I just think that this is not OP's problem though, whatever it is.
Exactly.
But let me know what you folks think. So anyhow, take care and good luck. Alright folks, and our next letter is titled, Am I a jerk for not letting a neighbor borrow my tile saw because he assumed it belonged to my boyfriend? So my boyfriend and I have a bit of an untraditional relationship. I'm a female, and I'm the builder, fixer, etc. And my boyfriend isn't really good at that type of stuff. My garage is filled with tools that I've collected over the years, a lot of expensive tools. A couple just bought a house across the street from us, and the house isn't too far apart, and I guess our new neighbor may have seen into our garage when my boyfriend and I were hanging out in there. This husband came over to introduce himself, and he briefly nodded to me, yet he shook my boyfriend's hand and was friendly to him while introducing himself. It made me feel very dismissed, to be honest, like I'm not his equal. He mentioned that they're having to retile the kitchen and do a bunch of other repairs, as the house was a bit of a fixer-upper. The elderly lady had lived there for 55 years before dying recently. He said that they were a bit broke after buying the house, and he is having to do the repairs himself and learn how to do a lot of this stuff. My boyfriend kind of just smiled and nodded his head, because he hates DIY. He finally asked my boyfriend if he could borrow his tile saw and maybe a few other tools, and maybe my boyfriend could give him some YouTube video suggestions. He offered to give it back after he borrowed it and said that he would buy him a case of beer for the trouble. At this point, this is where my boyfriend mentioned that all the tools in the garage belonged to me and that he had no clue how to build or fix anything. The guy was surprised, but gave me a half smile and said, "Oh, I guess I should have asked you then. What do you say? The offer still stands." I was kind of annoyed, and I told him that maybe another man in the neighborhood could help him out, and that I'm just a woman, so what do I know? I was admittedly very snarky, and my boyfriend kind of just thinks that I needlessly was a jerk to our new neighbor. I think this guy should have apologized for his incorrect assumption before asking to borrow my tools. I hate it when men assume that my boyfriend does the man stuff and I'm supposed to do the women stuff. It happens occasionally. Which, by the way, who asks someone that they don't even know to borrow a tile saw? Tile saws aren't cheap, especially not the one that I own. Am I the jerk? My boyfriend and I aren't really stressing over it, but I just wanted an unbiased outside opinion. Edit, so many people are saying, how did he disrespect you by making assumptions? If it was just an assumption, I would have probably been nicer, but the fact that he wouldn't even shake my hand and was barely willing to look at me made me feel like I wasn't even in the room. He was so friendly to my boyfriend, yet it was like I was invisible until he wanted to ask me for my tools. He was all, "It's so nice to meet you," and incredibly chummy to him, yet barely acknowledged my existence. Many of you are saying that it might come across as flirting with another man's woman to be friendly to me. First of all, I'm not his property. Second of all, a handshake and saying "it's nice to meet you" isn't exactly groping me or slapping my butt in front of my new boyfriend. Isn't exactly groping me or slapping my butt in front of my boyfriend. It's just called having manners, which many of you don't have apparently. Lastly, it doesn't hurt for you not to make assumptions about other people. Your penis won't fall off if you ask, "Oh, which of you maybe works in the trades?" All right, folks, what do you think?
Not the jerk. It sounds like this guy in general is just kind of being opportunistic and isn't really interested in knowing people beyond getting to use their tools. He made some gross assumptions and treated OP like she was a non-entity because he didn't think he could get anything out of her.
I mean, that's the biggest problem I have here with his behavior. Like, whenever I meet new people, I generally will greet both
Mm-hmm.
if there's a couple there, right? I'm not going to just, ignore one person over the other person and engage in conversation with them. I'm not just going to, like, treat them like they don't even exist in the room. And, he just did not do well on the charm end of things here, right? And even if he was in a hurry or something like that, he could have explained that he was in a hurry or any number of things, but I mean, like, if you don't have the time to be courteous, then maybe schedule some other time to ask for tools or favors, right?
Right. Well, I mean, that's like the kind of favor you ask for someone you know, not someone you're just meeting for the first time.
Yeah. And like why not just invite them over for like drinks or something like that and
Mm-hmm.
then say, "Oh, hey, you get to know your neighbors and stuff like that and like, oh, explain, "Oh yeah, we're fixing up our house, blah 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 blah,"
Yeah, you don't have to make any assumptions. You can just be like, "Oh, hey, we're fixing up our house. Any tips?"
Yeah. And then you allow someone to offer or to use the tools or not, right? Because not everyone's going to be comfortable with loaning out their tools.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that was a bit of an assumption right there. Like
Mm-hmm.
they came in immediately. They came in real hot with like
Mm-hmm.
the whole I'm repairing the house and not even really considering OP or their husband as anything beyond means to an
Well,
end.
that's it. He's just treating them as mere means, and it's like in general, I don't get good vibes from this guy because again, like if I was meeting someone for the first time, I'm not going to be like, hey, can I borrow things from you? Like, that's a once
Yeah.
you establish a bit of a relationship type of thing. It's not a, hey, I just saw you have tools, I want them.
Yeah, even for people I know and I'm familiar with, I have a hard time asking to borrow things from them,
Hmm.
right? Like just because like it's one of those things where one, if you know them and you break something, then it's gonna like, make things inconvenient in that respect. And I mean, it's
Well, you
just
don't want to borrow anything that you wouldn't be willing to replace. And, like,
yeah,
is he going to be able to replace a tile saw?
yeah. And if it's an expensive one and he's broke, the answer is no. No, he won't be able to. And if it's a complex tool to use, which I mean, it's a saw, I can't imagine it's going to be too complex. But if you did something to break it, then the OP would be kind of out of luck in that respect.
Mm-hmm.
But let me know what you folks think. So, anyhow, take care and good luck. Alright, folks, and our next letter is titled, I'm a 20-year-old male and I took my girlfriend, a 20-year-old female, to a car dealership as a first date. And now she responds curtly. I am confused. I thought girls loved cars. It all started when she mentioned that she enjoys the comfort of one of her friend's Mercedes. So I asked her out on a date at a local cafe in the mall. She agreed, and so began the first date in our relationship. I knew a franchise dealership from there. They had all sorts of cars, ranging from two-door economic boxes to $100,000 plus USD luxury SUVs and 4x4s. This is where my parents bought their 2021 Kia Telluride SX AEWD in dark moss with gray Napa leather interior, 20-inch black finished alloy wheels, heated and ventilated second row seats, and a heads-up display, plus a tow package, illuminated scuff plates, and roof rails. When the dealership came into view, I quickly abandoned the idea of chatting in the cafe and invited her to check out beautiful products of mechanical engineering inside. She said, sure, sounds fun, in a rather uninterested way, almost like she was trying to hide the fact that she doesn't like the idea at all. Well, we stepped inside, and I felt like a kid in a candy store. So many amazing cars. Then I guided her towards the first car of our date. It was a 2024 Subaru Crosstrek Wilderness in geyser blue with an anodized copper accented StarTech interior, 17-inch black matte alloy wheels, all-terrain tires, and upgraded super system suspension. Plus power moonroof, LED fog lights, and rear skid plates. We entered the car with the help of one of the salesmen, and he explained the details of the car, and I got to try out the features of the informant screen, and the powered ventilated seats, and the buttons on the steering wheel. I was ecstatic, and she, on the other hand, had a bored, annoyed facial expression. I figured that she isn't into this kind of car. So we walked to the second car of the date. I told her maybe a British car will pique your interest. She responded with a yeah, and that's it. Just a single word. The car in question was a 2023 Mini Cooper Countryman S, all four premium in sage metallic green, featuring a carbon black leatherette interior, 18-inch pair spoke black wheels, panoramic sunroof, and a Harman Kardon audio plus LED headlights, roof rails, and a powered tailgate. She once again seemed uninterested as I explored and explained to her every special feature of the car. Finally, I took her to the nicest car that I could find, a 2024 Mercedes-Benz GLS 580 4MATIC in manufacturer diamond white metallic with a turbo black exclusive Napa leather interior, 23-inch AMG multi-spoke wheels, heated and ventilated rear seats, plus night package, illuminated running boards, and a panoramic sunroof. The bad boy had massaging seats, which I forgot to turn on her side, and she said, let's just go, in a curt, annoyed way. So we went to the cafe, and she did nothing but scroll on TikTok and her other social medias. She ended up cutting the date short and went home. I went to bed immediately. I went to bed and absolutely bawled my eyes out until I fell asleep. The next day, I asked her about the date, and she replied with "it was good." From this point on, she reduced her effort at texting until it was just either yes or no. I bet that she's with another guy now. Help me, please. All right, folks, what do you think?
I mean, OP, it sounds like you decided last minute to change the date to something that you wanted to do. I'm wondering if OP had the car idea all along and just invited her to a cafe and then was like, oh, hey, here's this thing we can do. Like, it's very clear OP is a car person. And there's nothing wrong with being a car person. But for most people, sitting around a car dealership while the other person plays with all the features in a car isn't exactly in a date. Like, what was there for her to do?
So, I think OP is a car fanatic, and I think that they are tremendously interested in cars because I had no idea what half of the things I was reading even were in this post.
I know.
And it just sounded like gibberish to me. Like, you could have told me that this was features of a car, and I would just be nodding and smiling and being like, sure, it's a car. I know that they have an engine and four wheels and transmissions and stuff like that, but any of the extraneous features and stuff like that, I mean, I'm not terribly interested in. I mean, I could do basic car maintenance, but that's about it. OP sounds like they have a passion for cars, and they expected their girlfriend to have the same passion, or not girlfriend, but date, the same passion in cars. And I think that this relationship was probably not going to work out in that, in the respect that if you are this passionate about cars and they're this important to you, and you misread the situation so badly that you thought that she wanted to view cars off of a offhanded comment about enjoying the seats in one of their friends' vehicles, then I think that you're going to have to find a car fanatic partner who's going to enjoy cars as much as you are. Otherwise, the relationship might not work.
Right. Well, the thing is, it seems like he was way more invested in the cars than the date because he acknowledges that she looked bored and disinterested. And instead of being like, oh, we can leave, like, why don't we go to that cafe? He's just like, oh, well, we'll go try a British car. Maybe that's more your speed.
Yeah.
It's like, it seems like he even knew she was sending vibes that she was not into this, but he just went ahead anyway.
Well, and if he had, sincerely not picked up on any of that body language and just thought that she was as interested as he was, then that would be one thing, where if she were just kind of giving off, fake vibes or something like that, or he just wasn't able to read them. But it's clear that he saw her being miserable on the date and was like, I don't know, I'll just continue letting her be miserable. That isn't a recipe for a happy relationship, or even like a good relationship. I mean, not especially for like a first date, right?
Yeah, well, that's it exactly. And I think what you were saying is that it seems like OP is really into cars to the point where he likes cars more than people, it seems like. And like, you got to have someone else who's on that level.
Yeah, and I don't think there's anything wrong with OP's, passion for cars. I admire people's passions. I think that OP sounds like they really love this, and the fact that they have all this knowledge, can remember all this stuff about these cars that they went into and stuff like that. Amazing. Simply amazing. I'm not knocking this guy. But they need to learn some basic social etiquette, and, taking your date to a car dealership is not the way to go unless they are two car fanatics.
Right. Well, and dates should generally be for both people who are there. If she's just sitting in the passenger seat twiddling her thumbs, that's not really a date.
Yeah.
So I think OP needs to think about what he wants. Does he want a relationship with another person, or does he just want cars?
Yeah. Well, and maybe, getting to know somebody in a car isn't necessarily a problem, because you can talk to somebody in a car, right? And you can exchange information and, learn more about somebody. But it doesn't even sound like he was doing that. It sounds like he was kind of just geeking out about the car and its features
Yeah, exactly.
and ignoring her.
That's what it sounds like, is he was so into the features in the car. They weren't having conversations or anything. He would occasionally ask her something and she'd give a short clipped answer, and that was it.
So my advice to OP is go to car shows to find people who you want to date. Then you'll probably have better luck there. But let me know what you folks think. So anyhow, take care and good luck. But folks, let's see what the Wheel of Judgment has to say. Wheel of Judgment, turn, turn, turn. Tell us the judgment that OP's earned. Mildly inconvenienced.
I mean, I'm wondering who they're talking about here.
Probably the date. Yeah, I mean, mildly inconvenienced. All right, folks, it is tea time. Grab your beverages of choice. I've got some tea right here, and Amber, she has a joke.
What might you call an aquatic creature that is half feline, half fish?
Oh, you would call it a catfish.
Or a permaid?
Oh, a permaid. I would have assumed a catfish, because one of those things are real and the other one aren't.
And it's Mermaid Day.
Oh, so go find yourself a mermaid. I hear that they do shows often in those tanks at Disney World and some of these other places. So I mean, just don't throw coins at them and make wishes or something like that. That's a magic wishing well. Mermaids don't grant wishes. Just to let you know. I don't know this from personal experience.
A wink, a
wink. Wink, 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 yes. And I have licorice spice. All right, folks, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much for watching. Happy Spectacular Saturday, folks. I hope your Saturday is off to a spectacular start. Amber, we need some kind of moral advice and/or guidance. And please, have it on inconsiderate people.
Relationships are a two-way street. Make sure that you take into account your partner's needs.
Also, don't park in handicap spots and don't try to borrow people's tile saws without even getting to know them first.
Yes.
Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you all tomorrow.
Bye.